Have you had a struggle with sleep where you haven't had trouble falling asleep and you haven't had these long periods of wakefulness during the night, but rather you've had insomnia, as in sleep fragmentation, that you wake up often, you're awake for a while, then the cycle repeats with a certain frequency? If this sounds familiar to you, you have clicked on the very video on the World Wide Web that is for you. We're going to see how we can leave sleep fragmentation insomnia and have that experience of sleeping through the night again. Let's take a look. Hi there, I'm Daniel. I'm a sleep physician turned sleep coach and online educator. And in this episode, we're going to talk about fragmented sleep. Now, fragmented sleep, as in waking up many times or with a certain frequency, can of course happen outside the sleep struggle that we call insomnia. We can have fragmented sleep because we are snoring a lot. We have difficulty breathing in our sleep. We have sleep apnea. We can be waking up a lot because we are stressed about something in our life. We're anxious about something in our life. So there can be other reasons for that. But in this episode, we're going to talk about fragmented sleep as a part of an insomnia struggle. Now, if you're wondering like, oh, could I have one of the other things? It's, firstly, no medical advice here. Always talk to your doctor when you're concerned about your health. But I would say that sleep apnea and an insomnia struggle are typically quite easy to tell apart. With sleep apnea, we have many awakenings, but they're brief and we easily fall back asleep again. There's no struggle whatever with falling back asleep, and we feel sleepy during the day, and we sleep happens very easy for us. We can sleep any place, anytime, but sleep is fragmented. With insomnia, it's more like there's a struggle around sleep. We are wondering, why do I wake up all these times? Why does it take a while for me to fall back asleep? And we have a struggle to sleep, so that can really help us. And when there's something on our mind in our lives that keeps us waking up frequently, we typically know that. We know why we're waking up frequently because there's something on our mind. So this episode is really when there's kind of a mystery around it. We're wondering why we can't sleep through the night, and we're somewhat concerned about our sleep. Now, to start this off, I want to share probably the most helpful knowledge around objective measures of human sleep for this episode, which is this one: that if you put EEG on a person and you do a sleep study and you check their brain activity, you will find that everyone, meaning all adults, wake up multiple times, not per night, but per hour. We have multiple times where we actually wake up per hour, but we're not always aware of that, which can give us the experience of sleeping through the night. Now, some people hearing this may say like, well, if that's true, Daniel, then how can you title this episode How to Sleep Without Multiple Awakenings? Because everyone has multiple awakenings, and that's true. And I never want to be like clickbaity, but if I title this episode How to Sleep Without the Experience of Multiple Awakenings, it would not be as clear or as interesting, I think. So pardon me for that if I mislabeled this. But anyway, in a way, we can say that fragmented sleep or multiple awakenings actually is something we all have. Sleeping for, let's say, 7 hours straight is actually nothing that occurs when we look at sleep objectively. But the experience of sleeping through the night, of course, does, especially when we are younger. I remember in my teens, 20s, I often had the experience of sleeping through the night. Now, very rarely does that happen. But even if we don't have the experience of sleeping through the night, we can have the experience of like just waking up a few times and not being bothered by it. Very, very common, right? Now, with that said, the follow-up question for us becomes, so why do we sometimes experience fragmented sleep with the multiple awakenings, and we're fully aware of it, and it bothers us, and we struggle with this? Why does that happen? We'll get to that in a second. But firstly, back to kind of normal, physiological, typical sleep. Sleep is naturally fragmented. We have many awakenings per hour sleep for evolutionary reasons. At least this is what I believe, and many others believe this as well. That if we imagine ourselves living as a pack, a group of humans out in the wilderness as like hunter-gatherers, there are certainly many things that could be threatening to us, predators, other tribes, things of that nature. And if you imagine like a bunch of us, like 50, 60 people sleeping kind of close together, knowing that we all have multiple awakenings per hour, well, guess what? At any given point, there would always be one member of our tribe, of our group, of our pack that would actually be awake, and that could kind of scan the environment to make sure we're safe. And if we're not safe, they could alarm the entire group. And this way, we're all led to safety if there was any concern. So we have these awakenings for safety reasons. And if we wake up, find no threat, scan the environment, everything's fine, sleep is like resumes easily and soon after that. And then we don't remember these little awakenings. Now, what would happen if the fact that we're awake at night, the fact that we woke up at night in itself becomes labeled a threat by our brain? This is kind of this misunderstanding here where our brain goes like, wait, I shouldn't be waking up this many times. I shouldn't be waking up at all. I should be sleeping through the night. What happens if waking up in itself becomes labeled a threat to us? Well, what will then happen is we will continue to have these natural awakenings. But instead of going like there's no threat and fall back asleep, we will go like, we'll awake and then we'll react to that with like, oh my gosh, I woke up again. Why did this happen? The threat is here. This we will be somewhat alarmed. And now instead of like sleep happening easily and us forgetting about this, we will stay awake for a bit and we will remember it the following day. And then even if, we're not super alarmed, we kind of somewhat alarmed. So we fall back asleep again, but then we have a natural awakening again. And then we react the same way to it. And this is the reason for fragmented sleep as a version of sleep maintenance insomnia. Sleep maintenance insomnia happens when we are not identifying not sleeping in the early portion of the night as a threat, but like waking up and not falling back asleep as a threat. That's generally speaking what causes sleep maintenance insomnia. And if you want to learn more about this, just search Insomnia Insight sleep maintenance, and you'll find an episode specifically on sleep maintenance insomnia. But again, it's the same element here that we've identified, not like waking up in itself as a threat, and that keeps us having that experience. So if you at this point see that, okay, for me, I've started to think of these wake ups as like something bad, unwanted, strange, unusual, threatening, alarming, and that's why I have this fragmented sleep experience. What do I do? How do we meet this situation? Well, I would say that it becomes about our most common teaching here, which is about befriending wakefulness and teaching ourselves that being awake or being awakened is actually not a threat. It's actually not harmful or dangerous. Now, when I use the word befriending, it can sound as if we ought to really enjoy this and just like, oh, come be my friend. It's totally enjoyable to wake up multiple times, right? That's not often realistic. But by befriending, I simply actually mean not antagonizing. Befriending to me is actually non-action. It's like the absence of trying to fight something is befriending it. So it's really a non-action. But to get more specific here, I've like there's kind of 3 elements to befriending. And the first one is like just intellectually understanding that we're safe, intellectually, cognitively seeing that waking up in itself is not a danger. It's not something we want. It's not something we prefer, but it's not harmful to us. Intellectually understanding that really helps. And then secondly, experientially learn. And by saying experientially learning, I mean when we happen to find ourselves awake at night, we have just awoken, and we kind of like maybe immediately react with like, why did I wake up? This is annoying. Then we can kind of like, instead of trying to figure out what's happening and trying to get back to sleep as soon as possible, or trying to prevent this happening again, we can be like, that happened, and I'm not going to try to stop this or contain this or manage this. I'm just going to take note of that fact that I woke up, and now I'm just going to rest. Or if we wake for a while, we might be wanting to listen to a podcast or have a snack or do whatever we want that is not an attempt to get back to sleep or control these awakenings. And thirdly, just be kind to ourselves along the process. This often sounds kind of like fuzzy and like, oh, self-kindness, that's not going to help me. I'm having a real problem here. But so often we find ourselves going like, dang it. I listened to this video Daniel posted and I'm still waking up all the time. What am I doing wrong? Why can't I get this? What should I be doing instead? And this is actually, it sounds like these open-ended exploratory questions that have a helpful answer to them, but they're just versions of self-criticism. We're pushing ourselves. We think this shouldn't be happening. So just being gentle with ourselves and seeing, like, when we've been frazzled and scared, it takes a while for us to not be scared anymore. And that really leads you to where you want to be. I hope this was helpful to you and answered some questions and brought some clarity. Let me know in the comment section, and I look forward to seeing you again real soon. Bye for now. Hi, it's me, Daniel, and I hope the video you just watched made a ton of sense for you. That's, of course, what it's there for, to help you find the answers that lead away from insomnia into a place of peaceful sleep for the rest of your life. We share everything we know freely for this reason. However, finding the answers that are relevant to your specific circumstances may require some time and bandwidth that you may not have. Maybe you have a demanding job. Maybe you have children that rely on you. Maybe you have other obligations that take up much of that time and bandwidth that could have been so helpful on your path of leaving insomnia. If this sounds like your situation, then we have the perfect solutions for you. The Insomnia Immunity program or BedTyme. In both of these programs, we have a curriculum where the key teachings are laid out in a structured step-by-step fashion, so you don't have to search for them. There's also somebody who understands insomnia, who can answer your questions in a timely way, so you don't have to spend your time and your bandwidth searching for those key answers. If either of these options sound like something you'd like to explore, then go to our website, thesleepcoachschool.com. And if you decide to join, we look forward to seeing you on the other side.